So, hi everyone. This is Conversations with Trish, and I have a very, very special guest with me here today. His name's Shawn Banning, and Shawn too has launched a journey of creating, developing an online business. And we've met on several occasions. We're all part of a very similar online business community. And we met, I would say, Phoenix would have been the first time that we met. Are you muted there, Shawn? I can't hear you. All of a sudden it's...
line through the mute.
There we go. I've gotcha.
Okay,
so Phoenix was the first time that we met.
Yes, met in person.
Yep, we met in person. So that was a 3-day marketing event that we attended. You came from the UK. I flew in from, actually I was in America, fortunately.
Okay.
And then I think the next time was London, and we both qualified for an event there, and it was through qualification, not through invitation, that we went to that event, which was pretty amazing. We were, with a minority crowd of people that have achieved certain levels, which was awesome. But I think that what I'll do is I'll hand it over to you, Shawn, because I just want to basically hear from you a little bit, well, actually where you're from first. A little bit about your background, and then what led you to make this decision to start your online business.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for that kind invite, Trish, and some kind words there. So I live in North Wales in the United Kingdom. So if you're not in the UK, you'll be more familiar with the larger cities of Liverpool and Manchester, which are about an hour's drive from where I am. Where I live, it's very mountainous. We're right by the sea. So the reason I'm familiar with this area was many years ago when I was in the Royal Air Force, I moved into my role as an adventure training instructor. So I would take Army, Navy, Air Force personnel out into the mountains because it was a way of developing them outside their comfort zones. So I'd take them climbing, hill walking, camping, overnight expeditions, all that type of thing. So that's where I first came to North Wales. And I suppose what's interesting as part of the journey that we've been on, I remember my first ever experience when I was taken out on an overnight expedition in North Wales. And I remember I didn't have a clue what I was doing. For an overnight expedition, I took slippers and I think I took a dressing gown or something ridiculous. And typically in North Wales, that time of year, it just seemed to rain constantly. And I looked out the tent the next morning before we were trying to get a stove working and things. And I remember saying to myself, if ever I can avoid doing anything like this again, I will do. And I suppose the lesson for me is, it's about building your knowledge and experience. And as you do that, you start to see the same situation in a completely different light. So over time, I went from not having a clue. I remember that particular phase I was on, you had to be able to read a map and navigate around the mountains. And it was something, I looked at a map and all these squiggly lines, just like a big bowl of spaghetti. I couldn't really understand how it related to the compass and getting around. So the instructor said to me, look, I don't agree you've got to pass this qualification to continue with your course and your career. So I'm going to say you've achieved the standard, but whatever you do, don't take anyone out in the hills because you'll get them lost. And that was it. So so that was my level up. But interestingly, over time, I came back to the very same center that I'd taken that initial course. So it was about 10 years later. And I was an instructor there and then a chief instructor. And that's not to impress anybody. It's just to say that actually once you apply yourself and I think for me, because I was forced to go and do that course, I didn't really enjoy it. Whereas when I went out on my own and started to enjoy the hills and the mountains and everything it offered, I had a totally different perspective. And I did more, and I really started to understand for myself. So yeah, going back there just seemed quite surreal in terms of actually taking people out into the mountains and unfortunately not getting them lost. So that's where I came to North Wales. When the other key thing, while I was still in the Air Force, one of the jobs I had, there wasn't accommodation on the little centre that we stayed at. So there was an agency that provided rented accommodation. You just went to see them. They give you a couple of choices and you decide which one you wanted. So I had a criteria in terms of how far I wanted to be from work to travel each day, like 30 minutes. I want to be quite close to the main motorway that could access other towns and areas. So I got shown a couple of places, and I was torn really, because I really liked one house, but it was a little bit too remote. And then I was quite keen on this other one. Anyway, I was then out of the country for a few weeks. I came back, and the one that I was interested in, the guy had reserved it for me because he said, you know, you're going to lose it otherwise. And it was I didn't realize at the time what an important decision that was, because actually not long after, the relationship that I was in fizzled out. I then met my wife-to-be. We then planned to get married. We actually didn't, and then have children. We didn't quite do it in that order. So we had our first child, then we got married, then we had twins, and that's when I left the Air Force. And because I just thought it was such a nice area to live in and bring the children up, that's why we settled here. And this is also where my wife's from. So that's how I come to be in North Wales. I spent 24 years in the Royal Air Force. A lot of that was around initially physical training, then more adventure training. But as I mentioned then, it was really using the outdoors as a medium to take people out of their comfort zones so they could grow and stretch and be more effective and transfer those skills and confidence back into the work environment. When we had our first child, that's when I started to think, I don't want to stay in the Air Force and be a weekend dad or move the family around. So I started to look at other options. And that was quite a hard thing to do, is to decide what I wanted to do when I came out. So somebody had showed me a magazine that they'd got. It was about human resource management. And I thought, well, I've done lots of people management. So that's when I started to be interested in that, found out where I could do my course, set my goal of completing the 3-year course, and then coming out the Air Force. So that's what I did. And again, I suppose it's having a goal and then be committed to achieve that goal. Because I could see that finishing this degree in HR would allow me to leave the Air Force and get employment in a different area, like a second part of my career. But on the way, say the first year I started, I think we had our first child. The second year we got married, and the start of my third and final year we had twins. So I'm glad there wasn't a fourth year to the course, because I'm not quite sure what else would have happened to beat that. But yeah, and I look back sometimes, I think, how did I manage with the twins and and working full time and doing all this studying? But when you're committed and you can see it's part of the bigger picture, a long-term goal, then that motivation and drives there. So then I left the Air Force, got a job working initially as an office manager, looking after a sales team. And then as the company got a little bit bigger, I moved into the HR role. And what was ironic, really, when I left the Air Force and I met up with some pals of mine, we went to Dublin for a weekend. And before I left the Air Force, they were saying to me, all these little trips that you've been on, skiing and canoeing in different countries, that'll be the end of that now. And I said, yeah, it will be. And the job that I got this HR role with was a company that did overseas expeditions for school groups. And my chief exec, who was ex-military, said, look, you really need to go away and take a youth group. He said, I know it's not part of your role as HR, but to understand how, the transformation with young people. So I was allocated to a group of 15 teenagers, aged about 16, 17. And the main part of the itinerary was to go to Tanzania and climb Kilimanjaro. But also we did a project for 3 or 4 days, helping dig trenches to get water from the top of the mountain into a kindergarten. And the thought of being on Kilimanjaro, I was absolutely my comfort zone. But the thought of arriving in Dar es Salaam, a city I'd never been to before, with 15 teenagers, I had a teacher with me and an assistant teacher, but still responsible for them, was really causing me quite a bit of anxiety and taking me well out of my comfort zone. And I suppose being in that built-up area I could see far more risk than being in the mountains. But what was really an eye-opener was how quickly these teenagers adapted. So one of the first things, when we got there, we had about 2 days before we had to depart to start the first phase, which was our project. So most kids, you can imagine that age, there's only one 5 o'clock in their day, and it's not the one in the morning. But we had to be up early the next day. A couple of them had gone down to the local bus station, sorted transport out. And they just quickly got into this routine of being able to, get up early, pack all the stuff, but look after everybody and include everyone, look out for the people. And such a shift. And the other thing that really struck me was they weren't allowed to take mobile phones with them. And when we told them that at the departure point, some of them were almost in tears at how we're going to survive. And within a few days, they said, I'm so glad we haven't got phones, because I realized the meaningless of the communication I often send into or respond to, and it just gave them breathing space. And I was out there for a month, and it was just incredible to see how much they changed. And there was one girl towards the end of the expedition said, I can't wait to go home. And I felt a little bit deflated, thinking, she's not had a good time. She said, my parents won't believe I'm the same person that came out here only 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it was just amazing to get that realization from somebody. So I continued in a variety of HR roles. So when I was on my HR course itself, I remember, the tutor that took us, I remember thinking, I'd like to do that job one day. It seems quite nice, helping people, teaching people. And then a job came up. I handed my notice in at my last job, and this job came up as a tutor delivering HR courses. So I thought, I'll apply for that. I got that. So I started doing that. I didn't stay in that too long. And the reason being, the job I was led to believe was working with adults who were already in HR and wanted to progress. I ended up spending most of my time teaching in the the foundation course with these 16-year-olds in business, who I spent most of the time, telling them to put the phones away. So it wasn't what I'd signed up for. But my next role was working in a factory in the HR department. And I'd never been in a factory environment before. This was processing chicken. So it was quite a brutal environment in terms of how the staff were treated. It didn't really sit comfortably with me, because my passion in HR when I was in the Air Force was all about people and performance and development. And a lot of my time was spent doing disciplinaries, and you'd move people along to the next stage, the disciplinary, then they get fired. Anyway, what happened there was quite bizarre in the situation I was in, because I was in a small team. I came in one day and I was told by the factory manager, you need to come into my office. There's a serious allegation been brought against you. And what happened was, somebody in my team had said that I knew this lady had an eating disorder, and I was constantly goading her with comments, which was just the furthest thing from the truth. So they did the investigation, and not surprising, nothing came of it. And then the factory manager said, I want you to come into mediation so we can get things back on a even keel in terms of the thing. I said, yeah, okay, that's what I want to do, because I want to find out what the motivation was behind this allegation, because it's quite a serious allegation. And he said, I don't want you to do that, because that's going to rock the boat. I just want you to go in, just say, I didn't realize I was saying anything that upset you, and I'm sorry if that was the case. So overnight, I thought about it. And the more I thought, I'm not going to do that, because it just seems to go against what my principles are. So I told him that. He said, where this may lead to. And about a week later, my manager came in to an office, because I'd been excluded from the main office while the investigation was going on, and said, and she looked really anxious and quite teary. And she basically read a letter saying that your contract of employment is terminated because, you were unwilling to go into mediation after being offered that chance several times. So that was like a real low point. You know, I remember traveling home, feeling angry and also a bit scared, thinking I've got 3 young children, you know, I've got to get a job, what I'm going to do. And I knew I could get a job, but I didn't want to, part of me, didn't want to get a job just for the sake of paying the bills, although that was a necessity. And probably the worst feeling was almost feeling like I was 50 then. That's like I'm to just see out the end of my career doing whatever job I can. But then the thought of, I suppose, working for somebody else who could tell me, you know, when to work, how long to work for, really, after that experience, shifted the way I thought about a 9-to-5 type job. So what I started to do is look at business opportunities and self-employment opportunities. And because of my interest, passion around training and coaching, then I started to look at that area. And I actually went down that route then. I started a coaching business, which wasn't a franchise, but I basically joined a coaching company and delivered their programs. And what I realized was being fired was actually, although it didn't feel like it at the time, was probably the best thing that happened, because I probably would have still been there now, because it paid quite well and it allowed me luxuries and provide my family. And I think that's what I've learned is, it's very much the norm is to be in a job where you spend, quite a few years and you're loyal to that company and that job, and you keep working hard and you put up, I'm not saying it's all bad, but you put up with a lot of things that you're probably not happy with because A, you don't necessarily know of any alternatives, and B, the main motive is because you want to provide for your family. So I think because of that, I tended to put up with more things than I maybe would have done. But actually, I think it was myself and the fears about, well, if I don't work here, where am I going to work? How am I going to pay the bills? So I stayed in that role longer. And if I hadn't been fired, then maybe I would have still been there or in a similar role. So it gave me a little bit of breathing space. And I think that's when I started looking at other opportunities. So I started the coaching business. And then because I spent quite a lot of time on YouTube researching people like Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, Jim Rohn, other leading figures in that personal development space, then I noticed certain sort of little videos would pop up giving information about different opportunities. And I saw a few of these and watched a few. And then one day I just decided to watch one, and then it was about an online business. And interestingly, I'm okay with technology in terms of I can send emails and things, but beyond that is probably my limitation. So if I'd have known right from the outset it was an online business, I'd have definitely ran in the opposite direction, because it would be more about my unlimiting beliefs or doubts about being 50. Do I really want to learn all the skills that I would have to learn? It'd be overwhelming. I don't really know anything about how it works online. I'm not particularly comfortable with technology. All those things that the doubts that I had, and then thinking, well, yeah, I understand it works for some people, but I don't think I'm going to be one of those people. But I think the video that I listened to, I really connected with this person. It's almost like I could see a lot of myself in this person. And all they invited me to do was click on a link in their video so I could receive more information by some training videos. And even then I still, was hesitant, but that was more about me than anything with the opportunity. So I did that. And then I remember watching the first video and I was like blown away thinking, wow, this is amazing. And then maybe like a lot of people, life gets in the way. I was busy doing some other things. And I started to then think, I'll watch the other videos later. And that never happened. And then I think one night I woke up quite early, and I thought, well, I haven't got anything to read. I'll just watch those videos. So I started watching them again. I reconnected with them. And then there was an opportunity to jump on a webinar with one of the co-founders of the business. So I thought, okay, well, it felt like fate, because I remember it was a Sunday and I got this email saying there's a webinar today at 5 o'clock. And I think it was 4 o'clock UK time. So I said to my wife, is it all right to go on this video, this training webinar? Yeah, no problem. So I went on, and that made it real, and I suppose joined up some of the dots or answered the questions that I had. So I started on that online journey, and I think I did it more out of curiosity, just to see, okay, well, how will this work for me? And then as I connected with more people, I went on some of the live training, it really opened my eyes to the power and the possibility and the potential. And I was fortunate, I think, with my coaching business, I had flexibility to apportion more time to understand the online side of things. So I started going through that. And then it got to like, decision day, or not decision day, but then it was like, right, you need to, so I did the training and applied the lessons, but there's a point, and I'm sure you can resonate with this. There's a point where you put your first sort of content out, you start to market, and it's definitely not going to be the best version you're going to put out there. And part of that feels, I think, probably because like from the Air Force, you would never put anything out that you weren't completely satisfied and didn't seem 100% professional. But the only way that you know what you don't know is to do something. So I had this horrible feeling, and the person that was helping mentor me went, you just got to do it. You've got to do it. And there's always, part of the little voice going, well, I'll just watch one more training and then I'll understand, then I'll do it. And it's just procrastinating. So, and I suppose when I think about the days where I was taking people out into the mountains, and it's the same thing. It's just taking people out of their comfort zone. And that's how I felt. I was outside my comfort zone, but I had a lot of support in place. And so I did a video, put it out there. And what I didn't realize was, so for people that may be watching less familiar with this, we look to get traffic or leads. So that's people that showing interest and leave their details. So as I was still new to all this, I didn't know that I'd got any leads, because I didn't know how to find them in the automated system. And then I had a chat with my mentor, and he went, how's it going with your video? I said, well, I don't know. How do I know? How do I find that out? So I went in and I got some leads, and I remember thinking, that's amazing. So that's it. It's almost like sometimes ignorance is a bliss. And then, so, okay, I'm getting some leads now, and I take the next step. But I think what I really enjoyed was just learning new skills, but also applying them. And yeah, I suppose as I started to get more confidence in myself and how this was working, it really started to, take steps forward. And I'd say one of the other biggest things I found early on is I got a text on my phone of somebody saying, oh, I've seen your video, I'd like a chat. So I thought it was somebody that maybe was thinking of joining the online business. They'd already joined, but they'd had a few personal issues that had caused them to lose momentum. And so I had a chat with them, and it was as powerful for me as hopefully it was for them, because I started to realize, actually, I do know quite a bit in the short space I've been doing this, and I can pass that knowledge on to help somebody on their journey. And that was quite a shift for me as well. So then, as you mentioned in the introduction, I went out to Phoenix in Arizona. That was the first sort of live event I've been to, and that was just incredible. Particularly seeing people that you'd seen on a webinar on the little screen, and then seeing them in the flesh as well. And I know myself, you spent time sort of chatting, particularly to the latter part. And I think probably the biggest lesson, going back to that initial reluctance to put that video out there, is, a phrase that often gets used is imperfect action is better than no action. And I can take that all the way back to, well, my whole career, but certainly my online business. There'll never be the perfect time. There'll never be, everything will be perfectly lined up. But by taking action in the right direction, and there is no such thing as failure, because it's only feedback which allows you then to start to tweak and change things. So that was my early part. And I remember the person that introduced me went on the qualifying event that you mentioned. So it's people that have met a certain criteria, particularly probably in their first year or two, achieving sort of, a certain level of success. And this first event, there was a video made, which I watched. My mentor qualified for that event. And I remember watching this event, and it just looked amazing. It was, I think the first one was at one of the co-founders' houses in America. And I remember thinking, if I could achieve something like that in the next 3 or 4 years, that would just be amazing to be on that. And then a couple of months after that, I started to get introduced more people into the online business. So my results were improving. And then I was on a call with one of our sort of leaders, and they just asked me how I was doing. I said, well, these are my current results. And he said, if you continue and really focus, we've got a qualifying event in February. He said, you've got a good chance of being on that. And that was just, I don't think I even thought of it. I don't think I even believed it. But I think when he mentioned that, it's almost like I piggybacked on his belief. And then about a week later, I was on another training webinar, and he actually had a notepad with my name on and somebody else's question mark. So I thought, when I saw that, made it even more tangible. And then it's a really weird thing. It's almost like I started to believe that it was possible. And then within literally, I think a month of the initial conversation, then I qualified. And the really interesting thing for me was the criteria that had taken me about 7 months to achieve. The following month, I achieved that same criteria in 1 month. And it's just bizarre. It just, I think in all aspects of our life, belief is such a powerful thing. And I think Henry Ford said, if you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right in both cases. And I think really witnessed the power of believing in something. And what's I suppose been one of the biggest changes for me is just believing what you can achieve. And for somebody who thought, I'm too old, have I left it too late, I don't know enough about technology, is if you believe, and well, even if you don't believe initially, but even if you're committed and just take small steps, then it all starts to add up. But I'd say that my life when I was working in that chicken factory, to now, or the last year, is like night and day. Just anytime there was something on at school, like a sports day or a school play or an event, really struggled to get time off. And if I could go, I'd have to rush away, travel all the way back to work. So that's been, I'm not saying it's really easy and it just falls in your lap, but the freedom and the flexibility, I think, are the biggest things for me, where I've got far more control over that now. I can schedule key events in my diary and work around those to make sure I'm there. My twin boys, they've just left their junior school at the end of, so it would have been July, went to their leaver service. And, there wasn't too many fathers there. And the ones that were had to shoot away at the end we then went into a dining hall and we're going to sit down and have lunch with them. And a lot of the parents had to shoot away. And I just remember thinking how fortunate I am that I've made some choices in my life that allows me that freedom. And I'd say the other big thing is the quality of my relationship, particularly with my family. I'm not saying they weren't very good before, but with the pressures of, early commutes to work, the pressures in work, having to often work outside the normal hours. Sometimes I would come in and I'd be quite snappy with the kids, for example, and that was a big difference. And one thing that was an unexpected bonus was particularly where I wasn't that familiar with some of the technology. So one of my twins, who would have been 9, maybe 10 at the time, he really helped me with a lot of the technology stuff. So I suppose the other thing is really sometimes where you might not have the skill set or as much enthusiasm or experience, other people around you might be able to help you and support you. And it was just such a nice feeling to have one of my sons helping me. And he was really excited about the whole online business. And, he's very conversant with YouTube and he follows people. And I remember him thinking, actually, I was actually quite cool as a dad because I had a YouTube channel. So it was worth it, if nothing else. So, yeah, I suppose the not being aware that there was a whole way that you could actually earn money without being physically present. So that goes back to my point earlier. I'd always been when I was in the Air Force, when I was working in HR, I'd always have to be physically present to earn money. And I remember reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And that was the first time that I started to realize there was another way, that you didn't have to be physically present. And Robert talks about primarily real estate, which wasn't something that I'd really was into. I didn't necessarily feel that was for me, but I did start to open my eyes to, or awareness to, that there are ways that you can earn money without having to be physically present. And then I suppose not long after, an online business opportunity came along, and it just seemed to be about the right time. So I guess the other thing for me is when I left the Air Force and I got that job where I was taking people, I'd managed to go on an overseas expedition. Quite a few people said to me, "Oh, you're really lucky." And I remember, I think it might be Oprah Winfrey said, "There's no such thing as luck. It's when opportunity meets preparation." So when that opportunity came along, I was prepared, as in I got a HR qualification. I was prepared, as in I got outdoor qualifications and had the experience. So when I was offered the opportunity to take the group away, it wasn't luck, because if I didn't have the qualifications experience, I wouldn't have been able to do that. And I guess with this situation with the online business, the opportunity is there, and I probably, with hindsight, I'd seen a few opportunities. The time wasn't right, but when I saw this particular video resonated, I was prepared to have a look, and I was prepared to take it to the next level, and I was prepared to apply the learning, and I was prepared to put that first content out that felt uncomfortable. So yeah, I guess for anyone that's watching that might be thinking, is this something for me? Then first of all, it's an opportunity. You've just got to take the first step, and then it'll give you some information, you get a better idea, and you take the next step. And it's just small steps.
I think it's powerful what you've delivered there, and it's so insightful when I listen to your story. And this happens a lot during these conversations, that you go through and share your journey, and firstly, there's parallels to my story. It's quite interesting, and we get to meet each other at these events, or we get to meet each other briefly when we're masterminding, but never do I get to hear the full story until moments like this. And there's so many parallels that just pop up every time you're delivering your story or your journey. And I think to myself, I'd love to I've got to make a note of that because I want to
Yeah,
ask him that and that
yeah,
and
yeah,
that. And it's so powerful. It really
yeah.
is. First of all,
Thank you.
it's the bit about Wales, North Wales, where you
Yeah,
settled. I know that
yeah,
that's my family heritage and my
yeah,
history. So that's quite fascinating and
yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Then you shared the journey about you transitioning into sort of HR, but also as a tutor trainer,
Mm,
which I have done for a large part of my journey as well, apart from being a
yeah.
corporate accountant, also
Mm,
as a trainer. Do you think the skills and the tenacity or
mm,
the qualities that
yeah.
you have endured during that journey has helped to create something now that's very, very different as a result of what you've done and been doing has helped this journey now? So things like as a trainer, like the ability to coach, the ability
Yeah.
to listen
Mm,
to others, the ability to observe and give great feedback to people. These are
yeah.
all qualities as a trainer. And do you
Yeah.
think those sort of things have actually helped you to develop what you've developed today as an online business?
Yes, definitely. And I think taking a step back from they're they're like the skills that you can develop over time. Um, I think it's more about having uh, an inherent desire to help people. So when I look back, even when I was at school, I seemed to, and college, I seemed to get people come to me to run things past me, to get my view on things. And then um, initially my plan was to go into social work, and I just felt I was too young. I wanted more life experience. And then I thought, because I went to do a placement in an elderly home, and I loved it, and I had such a great time with people in there. But I just felt that I needed to get more life experience. So then that took me looking at the military, and then when I joined, I only tended to join for a couple of years, and then it turned into like a quite a lengthy career. Um, but when I look back, all the roles I've had, I've always been about helping people in some way. So when I was a physical training instructor, working with recruits, although they may not have seen me in that way at that time, when they used to refer to it as beasting people, but getting them fit, probably fitter than he ever imagined he could, and pushing them beyond where they thought they were comfortable to go. But then the results were, when they graduated and they passed all the, and part of that was a physical training test. So then another role I had was more about getting people who were in the Air Force, who probably got a bit um, lazy on the physical side of things, and just organising sport and events to get them involved. Then I moved more into the adventure training, but it was all about helping people tap into their potential. So looking at we said then about those skills, I think it's more about, so within HR, I didn't enjoy the disciplinary and all that stuff, because that was compliance. But the coaching, the training, developing people so they could do the best they could in their role and look to maybe get promoted. So the skills around it, yes, definitely, listening, empowering, asking questions which allow the individual to come up with solutions. I think they're all things you can develop. But ultimately, I think it's having that desire that you really want to try and help people tap into their potential.
Yeah, that's good, because I think people listening sometimes think, can I do this? Do I have the skills to
Yeah,
be a digital marketer? Because
yeah,
like you, like me, we had very, very different professions. And
yeah,
that went through my mind. Am I capable of doing something like this? And I
yeah,
didn't even know something like this even really existed.
yeah, yeah,
And so I think for those that are out there that think, well, what have I got to, how am I going to do digital marketing? At the end of the
yeah,
day, it's what has gone before actually helps you to what you're doing today more than anything
yeah,
else. The digital skills to actually create an online business can be learned. And sometimes you'll go through frustrations, and sometimes you go through these agonizing times to develop things. However, you can get help always when it comes to getting those skills. But the most important stuff is the stuff, I believe, that you come into the business with. And it's those qualities that actually set you apart when it comes to marketing and putting yourself online. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest qualities, and people don't probably give themselves credit they have, is that sort of resilience. Say for example, a mother who's had a child and then gone back into the world of work. That shows a lot of resilience, because to at some point, however long that maternity leave might be, to go back into that role, having spent time away, having then to be away from your child that you've just spent the last few months with, having to juggle all these things. I think it's that type of resilience. There's so many skills within that, and again, using that, using either a new mother or a mother of who's got a couple of children. There's so many qualities that they possess in terms of being organized, being determined, being committed, being able to prioritize. They're all the things that are important. The technical bits of an online business are, it's not anything that you need to worry about. They're all things that either you can do or you'll get support to be able to overcome that. And I remember when I was on the first few training webinars, I heard time and time again, being able to, build a website or being able to do something that's technical. Ultimately, anybody can do that, or somebody can help you with it. It's these personal qualities, of determination, of commitment, resilience, willing to take responsibility for our own lives, all those things that we'll possess in abundance but might not even recognize them. They're the things that will allow us to get through, because there will be, we are stepping out of our comfort zone. And actually, when people think about, I remember when I first started thinking, can I do this? I had doubts, lots of them. And that's really my protective mechanism kicking in, going, oh, you don't want to do this, because I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. And then, now suppose it's a bit like, I remember when I first started learning to drive, everything was, it was really stressful. And now, we'll go on large parts of a journey. We won't even think, we can't even remember, the physical task we did to change gear, to put our foot on the brake, on the accelerator, come to junctions, all those things were on autopilot, because it's in our comfort zone. And it's exactly the same with this. I was reading a book, I've just finished it, called The Miracle Morning, which for anyone to listen that hasn't read it, I would highly recommend it. It's really good. One thing that the author refers to is what's called isolated incidents. And this is applicable to all areas of our life. So, say for example, if I know, Trish, you've been on a recent, health program, and the isolated incidents are when people go, well, it doesn't matter if I don't exercise today. It doesn't matter if I have an extra spoonful of sugar in my tea. And they look at all these things in isolation. But actually, it's the individual choices and decisions we make, which when you add up, make a huge difference in our life. Applying this to an online business or any area, it's like, can I take the first step? So my first step was watching a video through to the end, clicking on it and receiving some information. Next step, watch some of the videos. The next step is take the first step in terms of having a look on the inside of the online business. And I think that's what I've done all along, is not looked at, I think when I started thinking, can I do this? I looked at the big picture. I haven't got the first clue how to do all this. But it's just taking each step. And another really good saying, so we talked about somebody in our online community who's phenomenally successful. We all start at some point, and it's easy to see these people and going, it's like comparing an orange to an apple, completely different. The start of my journey is going to be completely different to where somebody who's really successful, and yet we almost compare like for like. So so the same was every master was once a disaster. So you start off your journey.
That's good. I like that.
Mine is I wasn't a disaster, but I know what it means. I was like at the first stage, I didn't really know what's going on, and I made a few mistakes, but I learned from them. And I'm not a master, but I'm certainly moving each step closer to where I want to be.
These isolated incidents, Shawn, collectively put together can achieve massive outcomes, really. And that's what you're saying. And that could either be positive or negative. With the health and well-being journey that I've just been on recently, and like you were saying, that one cup of sugar or that extra piece of chocolate, and you sort of think of it at the time as an isolated incident, and maybe I can get away with that. But then it's this collectiveness of all of those little incidents that can lead to a certain outcome, whether it be positive or whether it be negative.
Absolutely. And I suppose it's being aware of each choice and each decision. And the other thing I think is really important is just taking some time out. And that's one of the great things about one of the training modules with the online businesses. It encourages you to just take time out and reflect on where you're at now, currently in your life, and where you want to be in the future. And that future could be the next few months, the next 6 months, the next 5 years. And I think when, we tend to live our life at a really, really busy, frantic pace, and we know there are things in our lives that we would like to change, and we'll say, I'll look at that tomorrow. I'll have a think about that. And tomorrow goes into next week and next month. And probably the only time people take stock, but not for enough time, is when it comes to that New Year's resolution. So we can, this is what I want to change in my life. We might make a superficial commitment. We don't work out how we're going to achieve it, and then we just fall by the wayside. So I think it's understanding what area of our lives, and they're all interconnected, and often the career isn't maybe the main focus, but it supports or very much influences how, if you're, as a family, that job, that career is important to provide for your family, which, goes back to that point early on. Sometimes you stay where you are because you don't sit down to think, what other options might I have? So in terms of those isolated incidents, one of the things that we'll always have is choices. We don't always recognize and explore what those choices are. So people will say, I've got no choice. I've got to stay in this job because it pays for my family to have a nice lifestyle. And that's where I was at. I'd say, well, I can't step out of this and just suddenly go into another job that I really enjoyed that gives me freedom and flexibility. Well, I might not be able to step out of one job and into another business or another job that gives me more fulfillment. I can take a step in that direction. So although it didn't pan out for me, one thing I really wish, although I don't sort of hang on to any regrets, one thing I would have liked is if I'd have been aware of the online business opportunity while I was still in my job as in the HR role that I didn't particularly enjoy. And then you could start to give yourself a plan B on the side, which you can work on at your pace. And then, at some point, if you choose, you could transition away from that typical 9-to-5 job into something that gives you more freedom.
That's what I love, what you've just said there. I think that's really important for the people that are watching that. There are moments that they have in their life where they're in a job that they actually despise or they don't really enjoy, and they're not getting anywhere and there's no hope. What doing something like this does is give someone hope. And I think when you're stuck and you're feeling stuck in a situation and you don't think there is any other way, something like this that comes along, that you start to dream again, that you start to vision again, you start to actually think about some of the things that you could do as a result of creating something really, really successful, actually gives people hope in a situation where they feel completely stuck. And that can be in their job, or it could even be in their own personal situation. Something like this is incredibly powerful, and hope can be a lot for someone. It can mean a lot for someone, and it can move mountains. And because you talked earlier, there were two things that came up, and that was belief and action. I think that they are the two most powerful things that actually can take you from where you were talking about where you are now to where you want to be. Is belief and action. And to me, you sound like a guy that is very consistent in your action taking, because you are into fitness. You've trained at an elite level, and me just going through this 90-day health and well-being journey, I understand now what it takes to achieve results in that area. I've always been very business oriented, and for me, it's been absolutely imperfect but consistent action every single day. And when I started that journey, that challenge, I couldn't do even 360 calories on a walking machine, but now I'm doing 1,000 calories on a cycling machine. And so it took me 90 days to actually change my thinking and get off a walking machine and actually go onto a cycling machine. Right? Sometimes it just takes time, but just doing it every single day imperfectly leads you to another place. And it's very clear in your journey that that's what's happened. Belief and action has come out a few times in this conversation, and consistent action. Do you think consistent action is key to developing yourself and moving into another situation?
Yeah, and with that consistency, like you said, it doesn't, even sometimes if it doesn't feel right, it will move you, and it will, even if it doesn't move you, it doesn't propel you in the direction as far forward as you want, it will give you enough information that you can then course correct to get back on the path, or continue on the path that you want to get on. Unless you take the action, then you won't know, is that the right path? You sometimes come to these crossroads and you're not sure which direction to take. And you could spend a huge amount of time mulling over which is the best option. And often it's going with what feels right. And even if that ultimately wasn't the perfect choice, it will give you the feedback to go, okay, I just now need to amend and get back on this. But I think the other thing to bear in mind is when we're considering our options and we think, oh, I'm not sure if I could do this, just got to bear in mind that where we're currently at isn't going to get us to where we want to go or want to be. And that can be off-putting, but actually we just need to remind ourselves that we will continue to grow and develop. So again, in that book, The Miracle Morning, it's something like the most important thing to remember when you've got a goal or a target, it's about, on that journey, and when you achieve it, it's about who you are becoming, not just what you're doing. And yet it's what you're doing that causes you to become who you are. So, going back to this about belief and action that you said, really powerful. When I was in that HR job before I was fired, I had the belief that, it's almost like bet the devil I know. If I leave this job, I'm probably going to be in a job that's similar, but I know the factory, I know the people. It's almost like that was my comfort zone. I had a belief that being able to I'd run a business where I had more freedom and flexibility. I didn't believe that was possible. I didn't know how, and I didn't know, A, I didn't know how, and B, I didn't know if I could do that. So therefore, I didn't take any action.
And you were forced. Isn't that interesting? And you were forced out of that situation.
Yeah. And I was forced, and then that took my life in a slightly different direction. It then opened me up, or I then became aware of other opportunities.
Mm.
So without that, yeah, I would probably still be doing a similar, if it's not the same job, I'd be in a similar type of job. And my belief changed, and as my belief changed, I took action.
Because they say that
yeah,
things don't happen to us, they happen for us.
yeah,
And I've been hearing that quite a lot
yeah,
lately. And in that situation, it's very clear that it happened for you, not to
yeah,
you,
absolutely.
for your benefit too.
And it's an opportunity. I think everything is an opportunity. It's how you look at it. So, I mentioned about some of the personal qualities, the more generic ones, which are important in any venture. And one of those is taking responsibility. And it's a word that you hear bandied around lots and lots, in the workplace, about taking responsibility. But actually, when you break it down, it's the ability to respond. So the situation I was in, I did spend a few days feeling sorry for myself, feeling quite bitter and resentful. And if I'd have stayed in that, if that's how I would have continued to respond, I wouldn't have moved on. I'd have probably gone back into some sort of role that's similar, been in the same situation. And I started to think about, okay, what do I want moving forward? So the way I responded was looking at different opportunities. I didn't go straight into an online business straight away. An opportunity came along. So I think what we can't always control is the things that happen to us or impact upon us. We could lose loved ones that are close to us. We could, loved ones can, we or people close to us can, have a serious medical condition. We can lose our jobs. There's lots of things that can happen that will impact upon us. But I think the most important thing is how we choose to respond, because that will be the thing that will move us, either keep us there or move us in a different direction.
That's awesome. How long ago, Shawn, did you start the online business?
I think 14 months ago. So 14 months, I spent some time getting into the, going through the training and I suppose going back to what did I hear, what did I see in the video? Because I remember I said, if I'd have, if somebody just come out of the blue and said, look, do you want to start an online business? I'd have run in the opposite direction. But what really appealed to me in the video was this person saying, all you need is a laptop and an internet connection. And when I started watching that first video, I really understood why that's all you needed, because the training, the education and the support are just world class. So providing you've got the commitment, the determination, so some of these qualities we spoke about earlier on, then you just follow step by step. And what I liked is it's not training for the sake of training, it's training and education, and you apply that. And that's helping you move forward to build your business, and then you'll start to market. So I think I joined around, I was probably a bit longer than 14 months, but I joined about February of 2017.
Wow.
And then started marketing. So I went through the training module, started marketing the May the 11th. It's funny how certain dates stick in mind. That's when I pressed the button to launch my video, and that was the start of it. Yeah,
that's awesome. And at what point did you say to yourself, wow, I can do this. This can be done? Like, was there a moment that you thought?
Yeah. Well, I suppose first of all, just getting my video out there, and again, for people watching, you definitely don't have to do videos. I chose to go down the video route because it was the thing that I was probably most apprehensive about. It was definitely taking me out of my comfort zone. So I went down that route. But I clearly remember I was sat at my dining room table. My kids were in the room and everything. And I got this email that came through, and it said, basically somebody's joined. And I just couldn't believe it. I think most people, that everyone I've come across, know exactly where they were when they received that sort of email confirming that somebody's joined your business. So that was yeah, that was like a real boost. And then I had some communication with this individual, and then about a few weeks later, they decided it wasn't for them. So I had this like big, high, and then it was like, oh. And then again, around beliefs, I started thinking, oh, that was a fluke. Nobody else would probably join. And then when I wasn't really thinking about it, I got another email a few weeks later. Somebody else had joined, and then the frequency of those emails became more often.
Yeah, it's good that you say that. Yeah, because
I
think that I remember, because the type of business that we do is high ticket sales, and I even remember when the first high ticket sale came through, and it's when you least expect something to happen that something happens. And I was shocked, because I think the first sale for me came through. So I started advertising about January. The first sale was February. And then the first decent high ticket commission came through, and that was in June of that year. And it was least expected. And it was such a shock. And I was heading out to Toronto, the Toronto event. And it was right then that happened. And you remember where you were, the conversation, your feelings, what happened. And it's moments like that when you say, wow, this can be done. This is very powerful. So,
and I think not to go into the, too deep in terms of this high ticket, but going back to the Robert Kiyosaki book about, how you can, leverage time, time and money, is that you say when you least expect it. But basically, we've done a video, we put some content out there, people showing interest, they get some information, decide to, register their interest, and then as if get more information, more knowledge, they can position higher, which means there's a higher ticket. What's really powerful about this whole business model is that you do a video, and you do that video once, and then when that starts to convert, as in people subscribe, and then they take it further and position at certain levels, then you don't put any more into that. It's you've done the work once, and then you get the benefits of that over and over again. It's just, making tweaks to find out what that message is, but it's so powerful, really is.
It is, and I can relate to that because my journey's been real estate. And the Robert Kiyosaki journey, I've subscribed to his learning, his teachings, and so I understand that fully, because once you buy a house, you rehab a house, and you rent that house, then you've got consistent income. And so you do that work, once effectively, and then you've got streams of income. And this is definitely up there with doing that work once and then getting remunerated or receiving commission based on that work. And when we talk about videos, it doesn't have to be, it can be just your story. It doesn't have to be anything professional. It can be even us. What we're doing here is delivering value, delivering information to people, and connecting and building relationships. And it doesn't have to be anything professional. It's just as long as you can share something of value, and share something that maybe you might endorse, that you have used and have got value from, then you can, if you just refer people, it's like going to your local restaurant and referring people to your local restaurant. You don't get paid commission for sending your relatives down to the local restaurant to eat, but this business can be very similar, and it's very powerful.
And I guess I feel so passionate about the situation I was in that, when I look back, really, I talked about, when you're driving a car, you're on autopilot. I think a lot of my life, particularly around work, I was just sleepwalking. I was just autopilot. Alarm would go off, get up, commute to work, do the things I do in work, commute back home, and then repeat the whole thing the next day. I didn't, you're thinking about certain things and looking to improve and develop, but generally I was just going through and just thinking, I continue to do this for the next, 10, 15 years or so, then I'll retire. And just seeing, like you mentioned about hope, having something else that you want to work towards. And when you open one door, it's surprising what other doors you start to see open. And I think it's just that you just become more aware of other opportunities. I think the other thing that you mentioned about, when did you first start to really feel that, this could be the right vehicle for you? I think the important thing, it goes back to that belief. So generally we say things like, I'll believe it when I see it. So we want evidence early on. And so I suppose just to put not a caveat, but just to be very real, is not everyone that comes into online business makes it work in the way that they would like it to work. And I think a lot of that is people maybe don't get the results or some evidence that it's working. Then they start to doubt if it's going to work. That affects their belief, and the belief causes them to not take action or take less action. And as they continue to take less action, they get less results until they maybe just stop thinking, this doesn't work, it doesn't work for me. So I think the belief is so powerful, because actually, I guess it's a bit like if you plant a seed in the ground and you start, you water it every day for 3 or 4 days and you don't see anything above the ground, you might start to doubt that it's going to work. So you might water it every other day, and then you stop watering it and it doesn't work. And then you go, oh, well, but underneath all these things are happening that you can't see. And I think it's like that in business, and particularly in online business. You're doing activity, but you don't know when necessarily, you can't predict when the results are going to start to appear, because we don't know what's going on in people's lives as to when the time might be right for them to take action, which gives you a result. So I think that's really important, is just to, as long as you continue to take the action and believe, the results will come. We just can't predict exactly when that's going to happen.
Wow, that's great. That's really awesome. I loved hearing that, honestly. And they say that about farmers, don't they? When they plant their seeds, there's so many days that you have to, or weeks or months that you have to wait for that crop to grow. And you just got to water it, feed it, and you're not going to see it break ground for some time. You just got to wait for that moment to break ground. And that's what we have to do on our journey when we're creating and developing something like this. So that's awesome.
And I think just connected with that, one of the things that can be overwhelming is there are so many opportunities. When you spend any time online, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, there's be constant opportunities, and sometimes overwhelming, thinking, well, how do I know whether this opportunity is the right one for me? And because of that, I think sometimes when we start something, we don't see the results. And then, using your farmer's analogy, some might say, oh, you know what, that field over there, that's really fertile. That's where you want to dig the seed up and plant it over there. So you've probably got, things happening underneath, and if you stay there a little bit longer, you start to see the green shoots and the flower, but you go, no, I'm going to dig this up and it's over there.
Exactly.
And you get attracted by some of the opportunity, some of the shiny object, and you start over again, you go, and then, oh, that's not working. You hear somebody else go, no, that used to be really fertile, but it's like this one over there, and you can just keep doing that. So I think it's just stay with it and keep taking the action.
That's awesome. I'm going to ask you a huge question now, and I ask everyone this question, and that is, where do you see yourself and or your business in the next 5 years?
That is a really big question.
It's huge.
Well, it's a really good question, because it's reminded me, actually, one of the other reasons why I took that step into the online business world. So I started my coaching, delivering programs for a company, and I still do that. And I really enjoy the face-to-face interaction where we come together in a training room. But one of the other reasons I was curious about the online side is, so what we've talked about, Trish, today is one element of it is what's known as affiliate marketing, where you promote somebody else's products and services. I also said that one of the things that really appealed to me with this opportunity was the the quality of the training, the education program, and being able to tap into the automated systems that are already in place. So I, as a student, had enrolled on a couple of online programs, and I could see a potential that at some point in the future, that is something that I could go into. I just didn't know how all this could be packaged together. So I'm now in the position where I'm putting together an online program, and I'll be launching that this side of the new year. So that's a really exciting part for me. And I think once I get that up and running, using all the skills and knowledge and education that I've picked up on this journey, then that will take me in another direction. And then I'm sure that will also lead to other opportunities. So to answer the question, it's not something I can say, absolutely, this is where I'm going to be with my business in 5 years' time. But I do know that my passion is engaging with people. So the affiliate marketing, I've been able to do that by helping people progress in their business. This next stage is really about being able to delve and dive much deeper to help individuals get to where they want to be in their life. So I think in 5 years, that's very much where I'm still be involved in, although how I'm involved in it and who I'm working with is probably quite different. But it's all of this is possible because I watched a video, I saw an opportunity, and the opportunity was purely to receive some information to understand a little bit more about how an online business could work for me. And it's then allowed me to further develop the online coaching program that I just had a little seed that had been planted to now to bring that to fruition.
Awesome. That's so cool. Thank you so much, Shawn. This has been an absolute pleasure and an absolute delight. And I've discovered many parallels between your journey and my journey, especially in that online sort of world, but also as a trainer, doing face-to-face training and mentoring and coaching, which is what I do as well, which I love. I do love. And this has given me an opportunity to get to know you more. And I think that's awesome. And we will stay connected regularly. And people are going to get so many insights out of what you've delivered here. So I want to say thank you so much for, giving up your time to share your journey with me and with others, and to share all those insights with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Trish. Much appreciated.
Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.